Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Please feel free to share where you're joining from in the chat. Thank you again for joining us. We'll get started here shortly. Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We are ready to begin. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 contact hour. Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society of Nursing, also known as Sigma, is accredited as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation. No one in control of content today have any relevant financial relationships with ineligible companies. To receive contact hours for this NCPD session, participants are required to attend the webinar in full and log into our learning management system to complete an evaluation form. Information on how to access this will be emailed to all attendees approximately 1 week after the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will also be available on the Sigma repository in approximately 1 week. Following the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. You'll see on your Zoom webinar control panel that you can send a message through the Q&A feature. This is where you can type in any question you'd like to pose to the presenters. Be sure to hit send so the message makes it to us. Please use the Q&A for questions and the chat feature to interact with other participants. This webinar is proudly sponsored by InterStaff, Leading with Care. We ask you to please view this brief video from our sponsor.
InterStaff is an international nurse staffing agency focused on a nurse-first approach. Since 1998, we've used our decades of experience and evidence-based support programs to deliver impactful results for hospitals and the patients they serve. We recruit skilled nurses from over 50 countries, all eager to practice in the U.S. As one of the longest-standing agencies, we efficiently manage immigration, licensure, and relocation processes, making it seamless for hospitals. Long-term nurse success is at our core. Our holistic support and customized onboarding ensure smooth transitions, enhancing nurse retention and successful integration into hospital teams. In today's nursing shortage, InterStaff's international nurses provide a stable, cost-effective staffing solution, reducing reliance on domestic travelers while meeting both short and long-term staffing needs. We help hospitals build a sustainable workforce by attracting experienced nurses from across the globe. We're passionate about international nursing, leading with care, changing lives, and helping hospitals thrive. For more information, follow us on social media or visit us at www.interstaffinc.com. InterStaff.
We'd like to thank our speaker for sharing their expertise with us today. Of note, thoughts and views expressed are that of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect that of Sigma. Our presenter today is Ashley Davis. Ashley is a highly accomplished healthcare professional with over 15 years of dedicated service at Indiana University Health in Indiana, USA. She currently holds a position of Director of Clinical Operations, Medical Service Line, where she oversees clinical operations for 180 inpatient beds at the Adult Academic Health Center. Ashley leads the International RN program at her 800-bed facility. This program currently has over 100 international nurses. Ashley began her career as a pediatric bedside RN at Riley's Children's Health. She has advanced to the role of clinical manager, a position she held for 7 years, demonstrating her commitment to improving healthcare delivery. She holds a Master's of Science in Nursing from WGU and is a nurse executive board certified. Outside of her professional life, Ashley enjoys exploring and vacationing with her family. She has been married for 11 years to her husband, and they have 3 children aged 9, 7, and 4. We're so thankful to have you, Ashley, and we're going to turn the presentation over to you.
Great, thank you. Welcome. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to speak with you today. As stated, I'm the Clinical Director of Operations at Indiana University Health Adult Academic Health Center. And a couple of things in my role, I'm so privileged to lead the clinical operations, but also our international nurse program at the Adult Academic Health Center. So I'm hopeful today to be able to share some nuggets of wisdom with you and hope that you have some takeaways from this presentation today. I want to start with our learning outcomes. So this final webinar series will explore key considerations to selecting international staffing partners. The learning outcomes for today are going to be to develop a strategy to meet organizational nurse staffing needs, identify the key ethical, legal, and liability considerations of international nurse staffing solutions, describe steps to create a strong collaborative partnership, and recognize retention initiatives that promote a healthier, more supportive work environment for international nurses. So I wanted to provide a little background information on my organization, as I think that it'll help with context as we go throughout the presentation. So Indiana University Health is the largest and most comprehensive nonprofit healthcare system in the state of Indiana. IU Health is comprised of 16 different hospitals with a total capacity of 2,684 beds and almost 36,000 employees. IU Health holds a partnership with Indiana University School of Medicine. The Adult Academic Health Center, which is where I work, is one entity comprised of 2 different hospitals in our metropolitan Indianapolis area. The Adult Academic Health Center has over 800 beds between the 2 facilities. So starting with our nursing resource, I think like many other states, Indiana has experienced a nursing shortage since the COVID pandemic. According to the Indiana Hospital Association, Indiana currently has nearly 4,300 job openings for nurses each year. In addition, Indiana is projected to need an additional 5,000 nurses by 2031 in order to meet the increasing demands of our aging population with multiple comorbidities. Without additional support, Indiana would need to graduate 1,300 additional nurses per year until 2030 in order to meet the state's current healthcare needs. IU Health has really taken this as an opportunity to partner with local nursing schools to fund increased enrollment and the demand. That's obviously there to help close that gap. However, there's still a gap. And so along the way, Indiana hospitals are faced with tackling the nursing workforce dilemma, as I'm sure many of you are tackling as well. With the demands of this size, organizations really need to take time to assess their current state, look at where they have opportunities, and create strategic plans to close vacancy gaps. One strategy for IU Health, which I'm going to talk more about today, has been our international nurse recruitment. However, that's not the only strategy that we've had. And we did uplift an international nursing program about 3 years ago. And throughout this presentation, we'll go through more detail of things that we've done to uplift that and some of the implications of that work. So looking at rebuilding the workforce, as I said, every organization really needs to take time to pause and assess their current state and really have a better understanding of what they own in regards to some of the workforce challenges. And also look at a strategic response to that. So the Adult Academic Health Center knew that we were going to need to take multiple different approaches in rebuilding our workforce. The downtown facility is really the heart of the statewide system. We frequently take transfers from our surrounding rural hospitals, and during COVID, we received many of the patients across our system, and we're kind of the main hub for how we approached care during the pandemic. As the population ages, we have seen complexity in our facility increase dramatically, and we see that climbing through tracking of our case mix index. So first, we really had to reflect on our current state and evaluate reasons why nurses were leaving our workforce that were within our control. After really doing an in-depth assessment, our nursing leadership team identified there were different approaches that we needed to take. We looked to rebuild our workforce. We knew that it was going to take many years. So our first approach was really a short-term approach. And our short-term approach was focusing on domestic agency nurses, so your domestic travel nurses. This provided some immediate aid to our patients, to our team members, in order to be able to continue to work through our midterm and long-term solutions. Meanwhile, as a leadership team, we really worked to address some of those internal challenges that I spoke to. Some of those were changes in our care delivery model that we took into account, healthy work environment initiatives and opportunities, as well as even doing market adjustments and reviewing kind of compensation models and where we were and how competitive we were in the market. So that was really kind of a midterm approach, is looking at what we had span of control over. Finally, we had our long-term approach. We recognized that there was going to be and is a shortage of trained nurses in the Indiana area, and the supply was not going to meet the demand across the state. Therefore, we started our International Nurse Program in 2021. The International Nurse Program was really initiated to support diversifying our team to better align to our patient population while building stabilization with longer contracts in comparison to our domestic travelers. In addition, we knew that the combination of international nurse recruitment was going to help support our long-term goal of domestic travelers not being in the work environment and really lifting our workforce back up to where it needed to be. So before we get started into a lot of the considerations, I really want to take time to highlight global health and the perspectives of international nurse recruitment from a global standpoint. So recruitment of international nurses is really a growing controversy in the United States and across global healthcare market. The migration of foreign nurses to the US is often being blamed in part for severe shortage of healthcare services in some countries. Approximately 4,700 foreign nurse immigrants come to the US annually, according to the Federal Health Resources and Services Administration. If your organization is going to explore international nurse recruitment or uplifting an international nurse program, it's important that you understand a lot of the sensitivities and perspectives of foreign nurses migrating to the US and the implications of that on other countries. One of the first things to consider is the mutual benefits of international nursing. Ensuring that you are developing a program and or a partnership with a recruitment agency that is a two-way exchange that helps to both benefit the nurses as well as the communities and countries that the nurses departed from. So a couple things to take into consideration. Nurses gain new skills, experiences, and have great career growth opportunities when they come to the United States. They bring diverse perspective and knowledge to U.S. nursing, as well as bringing perspectives and knowledge back to their home country. In addition, economic impact is one to really take into consideration. So the economic impact of their home country, often our international nurses will send money back to their families and their home country, which helps drive the economy in some of those smaller countries. If you're partnering with an international nursing agency, I think it's important to really ask them about how they give back, how they partner with countries that they're recruiting from to ensure that the recruitment does not deplete the nursing supply and create healthcare challenges for those countries. Next, I think it's important to focus on showing collaboration and support. Consider, how does your organization or your international nursing agency collaborate with their partners overseas? So I hit on some of this already, but really striving for a balanced workforce, inclusive of U.S. nurses and international nurses. How does the International Recruitment Agency, again, work with some of those home countries to support and develop ongoing global health development and sustainment? So a couple of ideas or things that I've seen is that the agency might be inclusive of support to those local nursing schools in those countries. They might reach out and provide opportunities for free training sessions for nurses in those individualized countries. And those are things to take into consideration when you're looking for a partner for international nurse recruitment. In addition, looking at and ensuring that ethical recruitment practices are being utilized. So communicating those ethical standards that your organization adheres to. So some of the ones that we really focused on was not actively, recruiting from countries with critical healthcare shortages. We want to be mindful of where those challenges are and ensure that we're not contributing to those challenges. And then providing fair and supportive working conditions for our international nurses. And later down in the presentation, we'll go through some of that in regards to how our organization really has uplifted our international nurses to be just like our core team members that we hire. Finally, having a cultural sensitivity and respect. So I think to be able to be successful with international nurse recruitment and the development of an international nurse program, your organization and the recruitment agency that you work with really need to have cultural sensitivity and respect for global health and the impact of international nursing recruitment beyond just your state, your facility, and the United States. How is this impacting greater kind of global health across all countries? So a couple of things to consider for that is diversity and inclusion. So diversity and inclusion in our organization are core values. And so we really brought that into our focus as we are looking for international nurse agencies to work with. Really assessing and setting a standard that the recruitment needs to be spread across countries and that they have the same focus on diversity and inclusion that we have. In addition, nurses are supported in maintaining connections with their cultural heritage and families during their time in our organization. So one example of that is that for many of our international nurses, they have the desire to go back to their home country once a year. But obviously, that really requires more than just 1 week. And so we work with our international nurses to take several weeks off in a row so that they can travel back home, be with their family, and spend some time, really just focusing on their self, and then allowing them obviously to come back and jump right in where they left off. So I've outlined here a couple of items that really have been imperative to our success. So looking at recruitment practices, relocation support, orientation partnership, employee-client relationship, and then sustainment and retention initiatives. These are all very important as you are looking at and really interviewing international recruitment agencies to work with. And we're going to break each section down and go into a little bit more detail as to what each section involves. So diving into recruitment practices a little bit deeper, researching different agencies, as I've said, is going to be very important. Reviewing their websites ahead of time, really getting an understanding of who they are as an organization, what mission, vision, and values they have. And the importance of doing that ahead of time is that once you then start connecting, whether it's virtually or in person with these international agencies, it gives you an opportunity in that communication and in those meetings to really consider if their interactions support their mission, vision, and values, and how does that align to your organization's mission, vision, and values as well. And again, a lot of this really goes back to ethics and making sure that there's integrity and that we're partnering together for the right reasons. Evaluating the agency's recruitment process. I've hit on this a little bit already, but this is very, very important. Assessing and understanding what is their process for the international RN recruitment. What countries do they recruit from? What requirements do they hold for applicants that they are recruiting? In addition to, are they able to align to your requirements for those nurses? How do they ensure a good match? And this isn't about filling positions, it's about ensuring that the international nurse candidate is going to be a good fit for the area that you're looking to put them into from a working standpoint. So being sure that as an organization, you are partnering with them on the different units that you're looking to hire into and to fill positions for, and what levels of care are those units. And the organization will then, the International Nurse Agency should then be able to really partner with you to say, that the ICU experience in this country is really going to best align to maybe progressive care experience that you're seeing in a metropolitan large facility. And I think that that is key to ongoing success of the international nurses and your program. So really ensuring that there's that good match between the international RN, the unit and department that we're recruiting for is going to be vital. In addition, really assessing how does the international agency partner with those countries' healthcare leaders to ensure that we're not hindering healthcare in those countries. This is, I think, one of the most important things to me, and often have a lot of conversation, and we keep a close eye on ensuring that we have a good spread and diversity across countries so that we are not contributing to any challenges in those countries. And being very thoughtful of not over recruiting in one area versus another area. Finally, as a client, I'd really encourage you to not be afraid to lay the foundation of what you expect from the agency that you work with. Knowing ahead of time what you expect, how you expect that they're going to partner with you, and focus on development of those international nurses is going to be vital. Our organization has worked with several different agencies, and I'm here to tell you that not all agencies and not all experiences are congruent, which is why it's very important to have clarity on the client end regarding what you expect from the agency, how that may or may not kind of fulfill your strategy approach that we had talked about at the beginning of the presentation. Next slide. So looking at relocation support, this I've learned along the way is very important. It's really vital to the success of the international RN. Moving to the United States, sometimes with no family support and a lack of familiarity with your new location, is very difficult. So we really want to ensure that the international nurse agency that you're partnering with is going to provide care to the international RN upon arrival to their new location. Does the agency, some things to consider is, does the agency provide a transition period before the RN starts orientation at your facility? How do they orient them to the city and the community? A lot of times that in-person support at the airport when they arrive, really walking them through what their new community is like, helping and assisting with housing, financial support for an identified period of time until the international nurse can really get their feet underneath of them, is a huge help to them and their success in the beginning stages. I've also seen a 2 to 3 week transition time from arriving to the United States to actually entering into the facility for orientation has been very helpful for those international nurses, allowing them, again, that time to transition, get oriented to their community, small things such as where are they going to go to the grocery store, and how to get to work, from their new housing, are all things that we often take for granted. And we want to make sure that there's time and space to allow them to be able to make those adjustments. Other things to consider with this are going to be connecting them with other nurses in the same facility. And or if you are a larger organization and you have multiple facilities that are engaging in international recruitment, how can you help kind of connect them to some of your international nurses so that they can start to feel more of that internal support within your organization? Finally, another item that we've learned along the way and had some challenges with is transportation needs. So really making sure that there's a good assessment of the international RN, and what their transportation situation is and what transportation needs there might be. Depending on if you, again, are a metropolitan area or a little bit more rural, taking into consideration that there may not be vehicles involved, and we might not have a driver's license, and those types of things are vital to ensure that they're able to get to work in a safe, consistent manner. Orientation partnerships. So once the international nurse gets to the United States and to your state, they've found their housing, they have, had a little bit of a tour of your facility, and you're through that 2 to 3 week transition time period, then orientation begins. So, when building your organization's orientation plan for international nurses, I think it's important to consider what training the agency provided, if any, ahead of their transition. So again, as I mentioned, I've worked with a lot of different international nurse agencies, and again, this varies. There are some agencies that will bring the nurse to a location in the United States and provide their own training for an identified number of weeks. Other agencies have teams who go to the different countries and work alongside nursing leaders to prepare the nurses for the transition to the United States, while others provide virtual modules, such as iHuman, to help with that transition from their home country to the United States and that transition of some practice differences. So just be sure to have a clear understanding of what your partnering agency does prior to the RN's arrival at your facility, and ensure that you take that into account when planning your orientation plans. And looking at orientation partnership, I highly recommend that you really treat your international nurses as you would any new hire to your organization. So at the Adult Academic Health Center, we provide a full orientation offering for our international RNs. Now, that isn't to say that some of them might not show huge success and competency and be able to come off early, but we set the stage for we are committed and devoted to your growth and development and your orientation. And we really allot that full orientation. In addition, they go through the same core RN classes, computer classes, and have prepared really that same length of orientation with minimal preceptor changes throughout that orientation. And that has really proven to be successful for us, and is something that I would highly encourage that you take the extra time to ensure that you are pouring into your international nurses. Some may also require some additional orientation. And so I think this is something important that I wanted to hit on. Across my organization, there are other smaller facilities that also participate in international nurse recruitment. And some of them really feel challenged when the international RN needs additional orientation. And often I get asked about, how I feel like they're prepared, their experience level. And I think all of that really goes back to, again, what you're willing to devote into their orientation. And so if and when we have an international RN who is struggling on orientation, we are very quick to reach out to our international nurse agency, hold some additional meetings with them to be able to better assess and understand what some of the challenges are, so that we can provide that additional support if needed so that the RN can be successful. I think what the international nurse agency brings to that is experience in international nursing, and experience in the ability to be able to assess why the international nurse is struggling and what they are struggling with. Sometimes this is related to nursing practice differences from one country to another. Sometimes it is related to cultural norms in regards to communication and confidence and concern to speak up when needed. And so partnering with that international nurse agency and ensuring that they are willing to partner with you is really going to be an important step and vital in the success of your international nurses. In addition, one of the things that we've done at IU Health, and this was prior to our international nurse program initiation, we created transition to practice courses. And so we have different levels of transition to practice courses based on your experience. So whether you're a new grad, whether you're an experienced nurse coming from a facility outside of our organization, we encourage and really require our nurses to go through this transition to practice course. It's a way for us to validate, where they are in their understanding. And we created a international nurse transition to practice. And with everything else, we've really had inclusivity of our international nurses. But this was one area where we specifically wanted to ensure that we were sensitive to their challenges that they had in just transitioning to a different country and how that impacts their ability to adjust, to the environment and provide high quality care to our patients. It also was a way for us to help them connect and create more community from an international nurse standpoint. So they were able to meet other international nurses that may or may not be within their department, exchange phone numbers and contact information so that they can build that support system while they're here at our organization. So I've talked a lot about already kind of that employer-client relationship and partnership. And so some of this might be a little bit repetitive, but a lot of what I'm about to talk about on this slide is a little bit more associated with kind of the business and operations component of international nurse recruitment. So it's important to remember that international RN, is really an employee, that those international RNs are really an employee of the agency that you're partnering with. That has been huge for our leadership to really overcome that kind of those challenges and the understanding that the international nurses are employees of the agency that you're partnering with. And this is why alignment, between the international nurse agency and your organization is so important. So a couple of the things that I recommend that you really focus on regarding operational needs and supporting kind of the international RNs throughout the entirety of their contract is looking at how often do you connect with the leaders of the international nursing agency? So the work doesn't stop with just the recruitment and the international nurses arriving to the United States and orientation. This is really a longevity, a long kind of partnership with that agency to ensure ongoing success of those nurses. And so we meet monthly and have program connections with key stakeholders from the agency and the client facility. And so that's something that has really been a great support for us. And I would highly encourage that you consider, if you're not already doing that and you have international nurses in your facility, and or if you're looking to start international nurse recruitment. It has really supported our program and taking a proactive kind of approach because some of the things that we're able to connect and talk about is really looking at evaluating support needs such as orientation challenges, lack of community support, and also like risk of contract breach. And so we'll have opportunities where we will pull in our frontline managers and they are able to provide more context. And we're able to kind of discuss any of our international nurses that we feel are at high risk for breaching their contract. Why? What is behind that? And again, what do we own as an organization and how can we better support them and how can we make the experience a good experience for them so that they can really fulfill their entire contract. So as I said, having these connections and looping in your frontline managers has really been value add for us to take a proactive approach versus a reactive approach. It really has shown effective as we've had very minimal amount of contract breaches. And have really been able to support nurses through some struggling, challenging times that they're going through, in that transition. Finally, I think it is important to review data on a monthly and quarterly basis with your international recruitment agency. So monthly review might consist of reviewing the number of vacant international RN positions that you're hoping to fill. Connecting in regards to retrogression status and how that might be impacting international nurses that you have that you're waiting for them to come to the United States. And then also just reviewing upcoming starts and ensuring that we're all on the same page in regards to their start date, when orientation will begin, arrival to the United States, ensuring that the frontline manager is looped in to those start dates, because there are a lot of, impacts. And like I said, retrogression, that will impact sometimes your start dates. And so making sure that you have these regular connections and that the international recruitment agency is willing to have those connections with you so that it can be a very smooth, seamless process across both the leadership experience and the frontline international nurse experience. In those meetings, another thing that I like to review is really looking at, during those times, reviewing the current diversity of our international RN program, ensuring that we have a good spread of RNs from different countries to support our local DEI work and global healthcare as well. So finally, looking at sustainment and retention initiatives. So for specific healthcare professions, international nurses often experience acculturation stress and workplace bullying and discrimination. So considering this fact, is important to make sure that your organization and the International Nursing Agency have a focus on sustainment and retention initiatives, and also mitigating and really working through any of those challenges that they are experiencing in your organization's work environment. The goal is to support that acculturation within their departments, the facility, and the community. So at our facility, there are several steps that we take to aid in acculturation of our international nurses. First is that we work with the International RN Agency and ensure that we're providing a tour, that we're connecting them with international nurses who are already at our facility upon their arrival to the US. Again, that really highlights that you're not alone. We have a support group for you, and we are here to support you in this transition along the way. Support groups, as I said, are identified for those nurses who originate from the same country, but we also work really hard to ensure that we have support groups that are inclusive of all countries, including, having some of our US nurses participate in what that support looks like for our international nurses from a department level. That's really has shown value in helping them adapt and cope with kind of those cultural transitions. It also allows us to learn about, their cultural, their things that are important to them and their culture, and how can we work that into, how we celebrate on the unit, how we recognize them and the care that they're providing to patients. Inclusivity is also a focus for our hospital, as I have mentioned. The international RNs are treated identical to our core staff in many, many regards. So we include them in all of our, celebratory activities, whether it's Nurses Week, Hospital Week, a department celebration. They're always included and highly encouraged in attending so that they can continue to really build relationships with those around them. Also, our low census procedures and orientation, as I mentioned before, are identical. And so when our international nurses get here, they go through orientation. We're very mindful to follow the same practices in regards to not floating them out of the department, for a certain amount of time to allow them to kind of gain and grow that comfort and their practice. In addition, our international nurses, although they are contracted individuals within our institution, we do not call them off first. We include them in our call off, our low census procedures, which is few and far between. But that's really important to us to ensure that, they are still getting all of the working experiences. They're not getting called off too frequently. are still able to, bring home, appropriate paychecks from that stance, as we know how important and vital that is for them from a sustainment standpoint. And then finally, community support. So in our metropolitan area, we are very fortunate. We have many different cultural groups and societies, and we often will connect our nurses to those cultural groups and societies so that they can also build a strong support group outside of the hospital as well. So this is just a picture of our IU Health International nurses and some of the diversity across the globe in our recruitment practices. So each flag and each pinpoint identifies where we have an international nurse currently, or an international nurse is going to be coming from that country to us this year. So, at IU Health, again, we really focus on doing our part to ensure that we are supporting the global healthcare concerns. With that, we really take into consideration where our international recruitment agencies are recruiting from, making sure that we have diversity and that we are spreading kind of that recruitment and considering what support is provided, and how the recruitment agency might be providing support to that country from a nursing development standpoint. So currently to date, we have recruited international RNs from 15 different countries. You can see, as I said, the diversity on the map. We currently have over 100 international nurses contracted in our facility. And that seems like a lot, but that's roughly 3% of our nursing workforce. So, as I said in the beginning, we're an 800-bed facility. And so we have a lot of nurses in our workforce. So it's about 3% of our nursing workforce. As I mentioned earlier, we started our international nurse program in 2021. And so at the end of 2024, we got to the point where we started to have some of the international nurses rolling off of their contract. And so we had 8 RNs that had contracts end in 2024. And we were able to retain 7 of those for a conversion rate of 87.5%. Now, not all 7 of those were in the metropolitan area. And again, this is where the focus is then on the international nurse. Where is their housing at? What have they enjoyed about their time at our institution? What area are they looking to grow and develop in next, so that we can really partner them with the right opportunity. And finally, I just wanted to go over some implications. So there are many beneficial implications of this work. Partnering with international recruitment agencies has allowed us as an organization to expand our workforce diversity, better aligning to the community population that we care for. In addition, the International RN program taught us that cultural awareness was an area of weakness for our team and our organization. And learning from our international RNs allowed us to have improved cultural awareness, respect, and therefore provide better care to our patients of different cultures than our own. There have been endless mutual benefits, such as learnings across all spectrums, allowing our international nurses to be fresh eyes to U.S. nursing practice at our organization has been vital. We, have allowed them to provide us a ton of feedback on how we might be able to provide care to our patients, just being able to see it from a different lens. The personal and professional growth stories are really abundant. So many of our international nurses are participating in or leading our unit professional governance councils. They have had heavy engagement in our magnet redesignation that we had last year. We support them in attending paid conferences that are going to help with their growth and development and help them bring back ideas on how we can improve as an organization. and then supporting them through training in multiple different levels of care and transitioning into leadership roles. So we've had many of our international nurses who have asked to train as charge nurses. We have one that at the end of their contract, they were able to go into an assistant nurse manager position at our organization. So many growth and development opportunities for them as well. So inclusivity of our international RNs as a part of our workforce makeup has also provided a lot of stability. Their contracts are longer in comparison to our domestic travelers. And the goal for us is to hire them on as full-time employees at the end of their contract. So as I said, we had a good conversion rate for our first group, and we're getting ready to actually have an information event this evening with current international nurses whose contracts will be ending here in 2025 to be able to answer any questions that they have. So with that, it's been an honor to be with you guys today. And to be able to kind of just share some of my experiences in international nurse recruitment, how to partner with an agency, and appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you.
Ashley, we want to thank you so much for sharing all of this great information with us. We do have a few minutes for some questions, so we'll go ahead and dive on into those. However, if we do not get to your question, we will share Ashley's contact information in the chat for you. So, one thing that you mentioned in your presentation was about your transition to practice program, and that you mentioned iHuman, the virtual modules. Can you expound on how you use the transition to practice program for your internationally educated nurses, and a little bit more about what that looks like and how other organizations could implement something similar?
Of course, yeah. So our transition to practice program is focused on the first year from the time that they arrive and go through orientation. It's really focused on that first year of transition. So specifically for our international nurses, what we have a nursing professional development team at our institution. And they lead quarterly sessions, and many of our nursing leaders will also pop in to listen to the discussion. But specifically, I'm very intentional about going to the international nurse transition to practice session, since I do lead the program. And a lot of what they talk about is what are some of the challenges that they're experiencing. So for them, it's really kind of discussing some of the differences in practice, and collaboration and communication with providers is very heavy in our organization. And for many of our international nurses, that is not something that they are used to. Many of them are very used to providers dictating a lot more of the nursing care. And so we're really able to identify what some of those challenges are and have open discussion. And so, we have oftentimes, 5 to 7 nurses in these transition to practice forums. And so they're able to kind of discuss, yes, I had that experience, and we're able to work with them on how they might be able to do things differently before. We look to really assess, is there something we can do differently to help build their confidence in regards to some of the challenges that they are going through. So it's very similar to our new grad transition to practice in regards to they're kind of like longer check-ins, but without your immediate leader, so that you feel very comfortable and confident in articulating any of the challenges that you are having. So that's kind of a little snippet of what those transition to practice courses look like. They often, will have some videos that they review, content that they, will prep and read ahead of time so that they can have discussion about their growth and development from a practice standpoint.
Wonderful. Thank you for that very thorough answer. And when you are bringing on these internationally educated nurses, do you have an ethical code of conduct for your recruitment? For instance, do you use the World Health Organization ethical code of conduct, or how do you ensure that your team is being mindful of these considerations?
Yeah, so with many of the agencies that we've worked with, as we start to talk about recruitment, one of the things that I often do is I talk about, where do they tend to recruit from? And as an organization, we do our due diligence to look at information, from the World Health Organization on where some of the challenging areas are in regards to staffing. And I'm always a huge proponent, if an agency that I'm working with is articulating about recruiting from an area that it's not recommended based on guidance from who, then I will really work to kind of deter and say I'd prefer to not I prefer to not recruit from there, based on what we're seeing from the World Health Organization, and the challenges in that country, and really kind of like steer from an ethical standpoint. So when I think it's important to assess the agency to ensure they're going to do that as well. But then also as an organization, I talk with every agency we work with, and I see every applicant that comes through. And so I'm always keeping a close eye on where we're recruiting from and ensuring that we're really aligning ethically to global health challenges.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And what about, have you experienced in your time with your program, nurses that can't quite obtain experience in their own country? For instance, one participant shared that some agencies require nurses to obtain a year of experience, but that experience is nearly impossible for them to obtain, as some of them would have to move across their own country to have access to that. What does that look like? And have you experienced that?
Yeah, many of the agencies that I have worked with do require a minimum amount of experience. So specifically, what we try to do, as I had mentioned in the presentation, is focus on what areas are we recruiting for, and making sure that our recruitment agencies are very clear and aware of the experience that is going to be needed for the international nurse to be successful. However, with that, what I will say is we're also very intentional once they arrive and once they're here on orientation. We've had a situation recently on one of our progressive care units, because we are a large metropolitan hospital. Oftentimes, the acuity of our patients can be much higher than what a smaller facility might see. And so we have had some situations where we've had to realign international nurses to maybe a lower level of care, because they've gotten here, we've started them on orientation, and either they're feeling overwhelmed or we're just feeling concerned about their ability to safely care for the patients, just based on differences of acuity of what maybe their experience lended to in their home country.
Wonderful. Thank you for all of this great information and answering our participants' questions. We hope that everyone enjoyed this webinar. We want to thank you for attending, and we, of course, want to thank Ashley for sharing all of her expertise with us today. We have updated our process, so our webinar attendees can now access our learning management system right away to complete the evaluation once the webinar has concluded to get your certificate. Please note that the link on the screen you are not able to click, so we have shared the link in the chat for you. If you cannot access this link, don't worry, you will also receive an email following this webinar in approximately 1 week with the link and the link to the recording if you would like to watch this again or share with another colleague. This webinar is the last webinar in the Navigating International Nursing Staffing webinar series sponsored by Interstaff in conjunction with Sigma's upcoming Creating Healthy Work Environments event. Registration remains open for this event. You can scan the QR code to learn more. We hope to see you at the event in March. Thank you for attending this webinar, and if you attended any other webinars in this webinar series, sponsored by Interstaff, Leading with Care. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.